Got a question about self-esteem. As usual, can't remember the name of the person. Fuck you, not grateful for it. Give me more questions. Nah, in all seriousness though, don't joke, I'm very grateful for it. I really like not having to do any work on this channel. More liberating than tampons. Alright, so now, I want you to think about the idea of self-esteem. What does self-esteem actually mean? Ooh, if Jeopardy the theme song met Joel Turner. What is it? Sorry, you can't answer. I always forget that. Look, self-esteem is self-respect. That's what it boils down to, right? Now, there's two types of self-esteem. Well, look, there's probably a million. I don't know, I'm not a psychologist. But I've read about two different types of self-esteem. But then there's always the masked self-esteem, which is the idea that narcissists, because it comes from that Greek myth of people who love themselves. That's actually a myth label, because narcissism, the best description I ever read about narcissism came from a book. People that are always asking, put down the reading list. I can't remember also, because it's also in my live show, only $12.99 at friendlyjordies.com. I'm not going to give it to you for free. Sucked in. Alright, so what I want you to remember about the tale of narcissism is that it was a guy that fell in love with his own image, and so he starved to death, I think, or fell into the lake and drowned as a result of being very obsessed with himself. Narcissism, yes, that's true. They are extremely self-obsessed people, but there is another element to their self-obsession, which is that, first of all, they're not really aware of their self-obsession. There's people that, I think most people generally understand that they think about themselves 99% of the day, and the only time that they ever not think about themselves, I guess, is when they go, oh, fuck, a car almost hit me, but even in that, a car almost hit me! There's... people think about themselves constantly. But, there are some people that are not aware of that, and they don't try and mitigate it, and they don't try and think about other people, and that is one of the, narcissism is just a less psychopathic version of being a psychopath. But the best description that I read of them, Emotional Vampires, that was the book. It's a great book. Cannot recommend it enough. There you go, you got one little preview. Now go buy the actual show, you cheapskate. It's pretty much just this. There's so much more content just for free. But pay $12.99 for an hour of this shit. Not very well filmed, but then again, is this. So, what they were saying, the idea of how people think about... how a narcissist thinks is that everything that they ever do is like Tiger Woods, this is obviously a dated book, like Tiger Woods on the 18th hole of a Grand Prix, or what, sorry, you know what I'm saying, I don't know what, Grand Prix is racing, right? Yeah, I'm a average Aussie bloke, I love the dish lickage, but, yeah, so, but, it's like him just, at one of those Jim Morbo's putting challenges, closest thing that I know to an actual contest, trying to win out and get that final hole to give him the advantage over his other player. Like, every moment of their life, everything they say is as important as that. That is how a narcissist thinks. Why? Because they're always thinking, are people giving me validation? This is the mindset of an immature person. Immature people. Well, very immature people go one step further and go into that kind of sociopath phase, which is essentially what a baby is. A baby is a sociopath that can't operate a knife yet. But they have this idea that the universe revolves around them, and they don't see how their actions can, be interpreted to the other person, I guess. But a narcissist sort of understands that. They kind of have a vague idea of that. But that feeling of being 7 years old and everyone going, yeah, we all got Pokemon cards, and you only got shit ones like Sandrill. You suck. You're the worst person in the world because your Pokemon cards are slightly less in pH than mine. pH, HP. HP in mine. Pokemon cards means Blue Haven pools. Yeah, they kind of float. No, they shank. They think about life like that. They're constantly just in this mindset of, are people paying attention to me? Are they giving me positive feedback? Are they constantly nurturing my sense of myself? And it's a very vacuous sense of self, because their sense of self is based off the opinion of other people. Now, our generation particularly, I always hated it when my mum said, your generation sucks. And like, the older I get, the more I realise maybe there is some wisdom in the elderly. They do have a point. Especially when it comes to narcissism. Narcissism was a lot rarer in the baby boomer generation than it is now, and partially it's because of them. You can't make monsters then whine when they step on buildings. I'm the Frankenstein! But in a way, we are the mental Frankenstein of that. And it's your responsibility, no one else's, to get yourself out of that mode. So, the classic example is social media, how people just sit there their whole life going, oh, there's no more likes. Now, obviously, as somebody who works on social media for a living, I can't talk. So weird. This is me. There's so many videos on this channel that shouldn't be here in my own financial benefit. You know what? Shanks being on Facebook all the time. You know what's really pathetic? People that get likes. Unbelievable. Anyway, can you like the video? Yes. But that idea that you just sit there obsessively thinking about the fact that, oh my God, there was a negative comment here, and oh no, this post didn't get as many likes as this one. You have essentially forfeited your identity, your sense of self-worth, into the idea that other people approve of you or don't approve of you. That is a dangerous concoction for life. It is a dangerous concoction for society, because what it does is it makes people, and I hate using examples of the Holocaust because it's so overused, but it is that idea of that quote that, when they came for the Jews, I said nothing. When they came for the disabled, I said nothing because I'm not disabled. And then when they came for me, no one was left. It's that idea in a greater impact. I say a lot of things. People always say, there's two constant criticisms that I get about friendly shooters. The first one is, Labour shield. No, what I do is read. But the other thing is, people always say that, I'm just doing it for the likes and I'm doing it for the money. But it really is just a reflection on their own mentality. There are so many things that I could be doing that would be making me a lot more money, even in the realm of social media, than constantly trying to push a mainstream parliamentary party that is destined to disappoint the people that vote for it. It's a mainstream parliamentary party, okay? And you have to sell that idea. Go and vote and be excited about voting for a mainstream parliamentary party that you're not going to like in 3 years, and then vote again. That is something that I constantly have to push. And why do I push that? I think it is because, as a result of reading all of these books, I have a high level of self-esteem. I look at the facts and I say, I know this is right. This is the right way forward. I've assessed this, I've read about it, I feel it in my gut, but there is a lot going for it, that this is a good idea. Obviously, yes, the Labour Party's imperfect, we all get that. Oh, you're so fucking woke for reading an article, man. How about you read a few books about it? How about you read some economic theory? How about you read about the things that they implemented and how bad life was before them? And what they were able to circumnavigate through a society that is stacked against the general population. Things such as, just quickly go through it, Medicare, NDIS, 30 years without a recession, wage increases of 44% amongst the general population, when the US had, in the same time period, an increase in the general population of a 1% wage increase over the last 30 years. We had 44%. That is as a result of the Labour Party. Okay? Sorry, I always just go into it, right? But the reason that I go into it, and I'm so passionate about it, and I'm very forthright in my opinion on it, despite the fact that it has done me no favours. It's done me no favours whatsoever. If I wanted to be some social media superstar making, I don't know, I'd probably be making 100 times what I'm currently earning at the moment. Not that I'm grateful about it. But, I'm putting that handicap on myself because I believe it's right. And I believe it's right based on a bunch of evidence that I've read, right? But I believe it's right, and therefore I'm able to push through the criticism because I have a self-respect for myself that is generated from the fact that I do what I think is right. Okay? So I'm the great example of it. And this is, narcissists are just terrible. But me, personally, perfect human being. But no, this is not because I'm a perfect human being. I had all of these thoughts before I read 300 books on self-help. It's the same thing with anything. If you read 6 PhDs worth on a subject, you're going to be pretty well versed on it. And you're going to be able to understand the tricks and mechanisms that you can use to take advantage of them, right? And obviously, there is a huge advantage in self-esteem. I think that the reason that you should be building self-esteem, this is the main thing that I agree with Jordan Peterson, is that you have to work on yourself first. And when you work on yourself first and you become a leader of yourself, it starts expanding throughout the world. And this is a great example because self-esteem, self-esteem, you needed to know that. Self-esteem is like self-respect, the idea that self-esteem resonates throughout the rest of the world is that people are naturally attracted to people that have a common regard and decency for themselves. Not only is this going to be a bulwark in your life against bad influences, teens that smoke, all that kind of stuff, but obviously, yes, there is. Because you have a certain level of self-respect, you will not be looking for the approval of others. And the thing is, most people in life, as Jordan Peterson again actually points out, most people in life are mildly bad unless they work on themselves to become good. I think that that's true, that the general human being is going to be a mildly bad person. They're not going to work outright to become some evil genius that lives in a mountain of doom, but they are going to be this person that kind of just a bit self-absorbed, a bit too into themselves, a bit insecure, and they're going to make generally bad decisions that have a generally negative impact on the planet as a result. i.e., virtually every plumber that triple charges you. Those kind of people. Because they're not thinking about long-term things and they're not thinking about outside their own general interest. Their own immediate general interest, that is, anyway. But what happens to people that just have self-esteem? First of all, the very first thing that you will notice is, you know how there's always that argument in the mainstream media and basically the project, 90% of their coverage is bullying getting worse? We don't have any specific examples, but we're going to say it is because a mum said so. But those people are always focusing on that. Bullying is so bad. You know what the best counteraction to bullying would be? If you were able to train your style to have self-esteem. Because think back to the people that were bullied in high school. 95% of the time it was their fault. They had a psychological barrier in their mind of, it was the same thing as what happens to like SJW cucktards on the net now. They had this idea that they personally are a victim, that the rest of the world is out to attack them. And as a result of that, essentially, the universe just gives you what you want. I do genuinely think that. I mean, you could use less wanky terms of universe, like the law of reciprocation, but essentially, if you have the worldview that you aren't worth anything, people go, okay, you're not worth anything, and they push over you, and they bully you, and all of that stuff starts to happen to you. They're going to move away from someone who has a high level of self-esteem. First off, the main reasons are because like a large part of being a boy is that you just tease each other and tool each other. And, oh God, it's just because, well, I was just driving from Albury, so I just listened to 12 Rules for Life again. But he was just talking about, they don't like weak men. Men don't like weak men, and the way that they test if a man is weak or not is that they tease them. That's the main way, because if you can't handle just a bit of banter, yeah? If you can't even handle that, how are they supposed to trust you in an oil rig, eh? But it's that kind of idea, that you know, being an infant, just like kittens like to play with balls of string, we play in scenarios that are going to help us out in the rest of in the world, right? And so those kids that constantly just when they got some ribbing, just like every other kid got, and they were like, don't tease me, and they started crying about it, again, because they had low self-esteem, and because somebody said, you are this, they legitimately interpreted that as, oh my God, that's an attack on me. That those people were the ones that they went, oh, and they sniffed out the weakness, and they go, yeah, started attacking them. This will just be an ongoing pattern for the rest of your life. If you don't level out your own weaknesses. They will keep coming back to haunt you for the rest of your life. That's what's so interesting about self-help, is that most people play to their strengths. Self-help is constantly saying, yeah, do that. But when you notice that you have a weakness in life, work on it. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's ever going to be anywhere near as good as your strengths. But the thing is that I think it was Brian Tracy that was saying this, that you are one skill away from doubling your income. Completely true. More often than not, that one skill away that is you in between you and doubling your income is the thing that you don't want to focus on. Why? Because you're weak at it. So, the same thing happens when it comes to self-esteem. With self-esteem, if you don't have that self-respect for yourself, basically, there's the sub-cues that you are giving out to everybody that you meet. And it could just be the classic, like, shoulders down, classic beta cook, that kind of stuff. But it's also just, even in your speech pattern, everything about you is communicating that you're a weakling. And as a result, people will treat you as such. Okay? So, you got that? Right? Is that okay? People with high self-esteem kind of just respect themselves, and as a result, when they walk through life, they are, a little more impervious to people just going like, hey, nice glasses, dickhead. The people with a high self-esteem go, okay, thank you. And the reason that they do that is because they are not basing their identity around the opinion of others. It is an extremely inherently weak thing. First of all, you will never be a leader if that's the case. If you are basing your opinion of what others think, you will just think whatever is convenient of the time. And I think that it's incredibly bad, particularly because of how much that I've been researching about propaganda recently, to have that mindset of whatever the crowd thinks, that's what I think. It irks me so much. Again, what I've talked about it's an instant turn off. As soon as I see anyone using just words like leftist, that's a big yikes, cringe, all those things give me the shits. And the reason they give me the shits is because you can tell that person is one of these people. They are just a sheep. They just move. Wake up, sheeple! But they have that mentality. They have that mentality of just following the herd. That is what happens when you do not have high self-esteem. High self-esteem is necessary, not just in terms of giving you personal gain, but also when times are tough. You are able to have the resilience to go, no, this is not correct. I'm going to stand up for what's correct when everyone else is not standing up for what's correct. It makes you, as Jordan Peterson says, a good person, but it does. That's what strong self-esteem does. It gives you that what would the word be? Armor, I guess, in real life. It's essentially armor. The more self-esteem you have, the more... This is a really bad example because I'm just thinking like heaps of armor, like one of those knights, and to the point that you put it on, you go, my spine! But minus that my spine moment. And I stand by that simile. But yeah, okay. Enough sillies. So when it comes to you and how much you're seeking approval from others, I won't even go into the second type of self-esteem that they're talking about, which is that, the ability to nourish yourself, because it kind of just goes into itself. But self-esteem, like everything else in self-help, is built by you doing exercises. Just like building a muscle. The more you do this, the more your bicep goes beep, 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 like mine. But when you're doing self-esteem exercises, the best ones to use are thinking about scenarios. And I want you to think about this, and they're always very uncomfortable to think about. Think about times that you succumb to peer pressure. Give me 3 examples of that. That's your first piece of homework. Think about moments when you succumb to peer pressure. You know what? I'll give you an example of when I succumbed to peer pressure. It was every time that I used to hang out with my friends and smoke weed. I didn't like smoking weed. I hated it, actually. Like, there was a couple of times where I laughed my ass off, but then after a while, it kind of just started very quickly shifting in. What if the cops come in? It just started getting extremely paranoid, but I did it for years after I should have stopped. purely because they said, come on, do it. You're not a square, are you? It was the classic 1980s winners don't use drugs scenario. I didn't like it. You know what stopped it after a while? Sorry, it wouldn't have even been years. It would have been a year because then I started getting into self-help at 19. That was about 18. You know what stopped it? Again, reading self-help and realizing that, no, actually, you know what? Like, it's actually giving away your power to just accept things that you know are not good for you, purely because other people will sit there and go, you're a piece of shit. And then you will start, well, but what if those are my friends? Good. People with high self-esteem start resonating with other people with high self-esteem, because you know what happens when someone with low self-esteem meets someone with high self-esteem? Usually someone with low self-esteem is just unnecessarily critical and nasty for no reason, purely because they're jealous of their own inadequacies, right? And so when they come up to someone with a high self-esteem and they start attacking them, the high self-esteem person goes, okay, that guy's a weirdo, and moves on with their life. If the other person, on the other hand, just says, if the high self-esteem person says to the low self-esteem person, I was just going to use this, and then I just quickly looked into the little side camera and realised I can't really talk, but, you know, your hair's a bit messy. Your hair's a bit messy. They're just like, how could you say that? So, that's the first thing. When did you succumb to peer pressure? And I know that that's a very primary school activity, but there was a reason that they started giving them out. A lot of the self-esteem movement was very poorly executed, but the general idea there, I still agree, and the 70s had it right. One of the main things is, yes, you have to get to the point where you can say, no, I respect myself enough to not do those things. I don't need to be looking for outside approval. That is essentially what you are aiming to do with this exercise. And the second point I want you to do is I want you to write down this. Happiness is the default state. Meaning that if you are content doing nothing, if you are content sitting there in a room by yourself, that's how you know that you have high self-esteem. It's not when you're constantly going, I've got to ring my friend, I feel nervous, that kind of, you know, a lot of people that have anxieties, a lot of that is just because they're constantly not having, just like a dog, like one of those little shitty poodles that always comes up to you and go, they clearly have low self-esteem, don't they? A little flaky skin, a little crap hairdo. So that's the second point that I want you to write down. I want you to write down that happiness is the default state. I want you to get content with that idea. That actually at the core of it, when you get rid of all of those ideas of what am I doing right now? Who am I hanging out with? Are my friends cool enough? All that stuff. If you just notice that at pretty much any moment in life, unless you're running away from a bear or ISIS, you know, any of that stuff, in most situations, you should actually be feeling at least fairly content. If you're not feeling fairly content, it is because you have low self-esteem. You do not have self-respect. Now, the third, and this is going to be a weird one that a lot of people are going to sit there and say, like, yeah, I'm not going to be doing that. But it works. In the moments in my life where I've had really low points, and usually it comes around the fact when there's like a large contingency of media assault on me, right? You know what I do? The old Merriam-Webster technique. And that is Louise Hayes, who's one of the queens of self-help. She stands in front of the mirror and just looks at herself, smiles, is proud of her appearance, sits there and says things like this: I love and approve myself. I love and approve of myself. I love and approve of myself. Maybe 10, 15, 20 times before she has a major meeting or anything like that. And everybody that meets her always says, yeah, it's a bit kooky, but if you meet Louise Hayes, she has a presence that most people do not have. Why? Because she has conditioned herself into thinking that I am enough. As I am. I love and approve myself. And as a result of that, it actually has the inverse inflection, because people that are constantly thinking, what do people think of me? The very fact that they're thinking, what do people think of me? People don't think much of you. But if you are sitting there and just saying that no, or you know, who I am is fine, as it is. There's things that you can improve on, obviously, but that is not You know, directly tied to how I feel about myself. Just the fact that I'm not perfect, nobody in the world is. Those kind of people have a gravitas to them. People are attracted to these people. This is that point of just, you know, you start off with yourself and then it starts moving out into the world. You will have people coming up to you wanting to give you things because, again, you are respecting yourself, and so then other people will start respecting you. You hold that vibe. Okay? So that's the shortcut. Obviously, a lot of people are always just going to be like, that's kooky. But the thing is, incantations work. Incantations are the real spells and magic of the real world because you can basically hypnotize yourself into thinking anything. So, if those two other ones that, you know, get a little bit deep sometimes, this one that is a bit kind of, you know, just a bit, yeah, my skin's kind of got goosebumps thinking about that. I'm not going to do that. But that one works. It works. I know from experience. And I do. I love having all this housewife self-help at my fingertips. Whoever you were today, whoever you were yesterday is not you tomorrow. Well, not fingertips. Maybe that was a bit of a diss. But 2 fingertips. You, give me questions. Like the video. Thank you so much for watching. It means so much to me. But seriously, if you've got negative comments, fuck off! I don't need them. Just about rambling off in 20 minutes about self-esteem. Bye, see ya.